The wind roared through the Fredericksburg flea market like a freight train, kicking up clouds of red dust that stung Clarence Clare Withers' eyes as he stumbled back from the auction pen. A rusted gate had swung loose in the gust, slamming into his shoulder with a sickening thud, and now the crowd's laughter rang louder than the howling air. At 62, Claire's knees trembled under the strain, his breath ragged, but he gripped the splintered fence post, refusing to fall. Beyond the pen, a German shepherd lay sprawled, scarred, skeletal, a pitiful heap ignored by the jeering onlookers. Claire's heart pounded not from the pain but from the dog's eyes, hollow, unblinking, staring straight through him like a ghost from Vietnam. He'd come to this dusty Texas market on March 30th, 2025, seeking a flicker of warmth amid the chaos of his lonely ranch life. Not this. A mirror to his own broken soul teetering on the edge of collapse. The flea market sprawled across a sun-baked lot outside Fredericksburg, a patchwork of sagging stalls and weathered tarps strung between poles. Lanterns swayed overhead, casting a golden flicker over tables piled with chipped china, faded quilts, and jars of homemade jam. The air carried the smoky tang of BBQ from a pit near the entrance, mingling with the twang of a guitar strumming Sweet Home Alabama from a pickup truck's radio. It was late winter, the kind of day where the dry wind bit harder than the cold, and folks in denim jackets swapped stories over styrofoam cups of coffee. Claire usually stayed home, hunched by his own radio, letting Hank Williams's lonesome croon drown out the echoes of war, gunfire, screams, the monsoon that nearly took him in 68. But today, restlessness had driven him here, and now that damned gate had pinned him in a spotlight he didn't want. $20, anyone? The auctioneer rasped, a wiry man with a sweat-stained hat pacing the concrete slab where the dog lay. The German shepherd's ribs jutted beneath a dull coat, his scars, jagged lines, and puckered burns, gleaming under the lanterns like a cruel map. "Useless mutt!" a farmer in oil-stained overalls hollered, sparking chuckles from the crowd. Claire's jaw tightened, his calloused hands clenching. He'd seen dogs like this in Nam, strays that curled beside him in foxholes, offering warmth when the world turned cold. This one was no stray, though. Those scars told a story of betrayal, not wandering. The auctioneer's voice cracked again. "Goin' once!" But Claire's boots scraped the dirt as he straightened, his voice cutting through the din like a blade. "I'll take him." The crowd stilled, heads swiveling. Claire stood tall despite the ache in his shoulder, his gray hair damp with sweat, his Marine Corps jacket frayed at the cuffs. $20, he said, steady but low, a tone that dared defiance. The auctioneer blinked, then nodded hastily. "Sold to the old man in the jacket." Relief washed over his pinched face, but Claire barely noticed. He stepped toward the pen, crouching a safe distance from the dog, his breath fogging in the chill. "Hey, fella," he murmured. "I'm Claire. You're dusty now. Gonna get you out of this mess." The dog's ears twitched, a faint spark in those haunted eyes. And Claire felt something shift, a thread of trust, fragile as spider silk. From her honey stall across the lot, Ruby Mae Dawson watched, her red-dyed curls whipping in the wind. At 58, she was a flea market fixture, her voice loud enough to hawk jars over the racket, her spirit unbroken despite losing her husband to Vietnam's jungles. She'd seen Claire before, a quiet figure who'd buy a jar of wildflower honey and nod without a word, his eyes always distant. Today was different. He'd moved like a man possessed. And Ruby Mae's curiosity burned brighter, than the lanterns. She edged closer, clutching a jar, when a man in a cheap suit, Leon Carver, pushed through the crowd, his boots thudding on the dirt. "That dog's military property," he snapped, his voice clipped and cold, blocking Claire's path to the truck. "Belongs to my brother Roy Hensley. Hand him over, old man, or there's trouble." Claire froze, Dusty tensing beside him, a low growl rumbling in the dog's throat. Leon's hand hovered near his belt, a threat unspoken but clear. Ruby May's heart raced. She'd lost too much to war's fallout to let this pass. "Oh, hell no," she muttered, stomping forward. With a dramatic yelp, she tripped, hurling her honey jar at Leon's feet. Glass shattered, sticky amber splatter in his boots, and the crowd gasped as she wailed, "My best batch!" In the chaos, Claire slipped past, Dusty limping at his side, the pair vanishing toward his battered Ford. Leon cursed, kicking at the mess, but Ruby May caught his glare, sharp, dangerous, and a phone call he made as she pretended to fuss over her stall. "Roy, it's Leon. He's got the dog. What now?" The sun dipped low as Claire drove home, painting the Texas plains in crimson and gold. Dusty slumped in the passenger seat, head resting warily on the torn upholstery, his scars stark in the fading light. Claire's shoulder throbbed, but his mind churned with that name, Roy Hensley. It tugged at something buried, a whisper from the war he couldn't place. Back at the market, Ruby May swept up glass, her hands steady but her thoughts racing. Leon's call echoed in her ears, a puzzle she'd pieced together. She'd lost her Tom to men like that, cold, calculating, and she'd be damned if Claire faced them alone. Ahead the ranch loomed, a silhouette against the dusk, promising refuge, but hinting at storms to come. For Claire and Dusty this was a beginning, one shadowed by secrets clawing to the surface. The storm hit Claire's ranch like a vengeful spirit, tearing through the Texas night with a fury that rattled the tin roof and bent the gnarled oaks lining the dusty fields. Rain lashed the windows in sheets, thunder rolling over the hills like artillery fire, a sound that yanked Claire Withers, back to the monsoons of Vietnam. He sat by the wood stove, its crackling glow casting shadows across the pine walls, his gray eyes fixed on Dusty. The German shepherd lay on a threadbare blanket near the door, closer than the night before, his scarred body tense but still. Claire's hands, rough from years of war and solitude, gripped a chipped mug of coffee, steam curling upward like a fragile prayer. He'd brought Dusty here 2 days ago from the Fredericksburg flea market, a refuge from the jeers and the cold threat of Leon Carver, but peace felt as distant as ever. Lightning split the sky, illuminating Dusty's scars, jagged lines along his flank, a burn near his ear, and Claire's chest tightened. Those weren't random wounds. They spoke of cruelty, deliberate and deep, a betrayal he recognized too well. Then came the thunder, a crack sharp as a mortar blast, and Dusty bolted. His paws scrabbled against the floor, a blur of fur and panic, crashing through the screen door into the storm's embrace. Claire leapt up, coffee spilling across the table, his voice swallowed by the gale. "Dusty!" He grabbed his jacket, the ache in his back flaring as he plunged into the rain, mud sucking at his boots. The world was chaos. Wind stung his face, water blurred his vision. But he stumbled forward, driven by a need he couldn't name, a soldier's instinct to save what was his. Half a mile out, he found Dusty trapped in a flooded ditch, the dog's paws clawing at the slick earth, growls lost to the wind. Blood matted his fur, a fresh gash from a jagged root, but it was his eyes that stopped Claire cold. Wild, unseeing, trapped in a terror beyond this storm. Claire slid down heedless of the mud, rain plastering his gray hair to his forehead. He sat a safe distance away, breath fogging in the chill, and spoke low. "I know what it's like, buddy. Monsoon hit us in '68. Trapped me in a ditch like this, water rising, thought I'd drown with the screams in my ears." His voice trembled, a memory he'd buried spilling out. Rain, a squadmate's hand slipping from his. Guilt that gnawed at him still. Dusty's ears flicked, his trembling frame stilling slightly. And Claire kept talking, words an anchor in the tempest. "You're not alone now. We'll get through this." Headlights pierced the haze, a pickup rattling up the gravel drive. Dr. Alma Gutierrez stepped out, her silver hair plastered to her face, medical bag slung over her shoulder. At 66, she carried a quiet strength, honed by years tending abused animals in Fredericksburg's barns. Ruby Mae Dawson had called her, breathless and insistent, and Alma hadn't hesitated. She crouched by the ditch, her warm voice cutting through the rain. "Claire, he's hurt. Let me help." Dusty flinched at her approach, a low growl rumbling, but Claire nodded, steadying him. Alma's hands moved gently, finding a metal tag beneath the thick fur of Dusty's neck, overgrown, unnoticed until now. "Titan," she read, her breath quickening. "Handler, Roy Hensley." The name hung heavy, a shadow linking back to Leon's threat. Ruby Mae arrived minutes later, her red curls dripping, her voice sharp with urgency. "I heard that bastard Leon at the market. Phoned someone about Hensley and a failed program. This ain't random, Claire." Alma's eyes narrowed, tracing Dusty's scars with clinical precision. "These aren't war wounds," she said, her tone bitter. "Burns, cuts, done with tools, maybe medical gear. Someone broke him on purpose." Claire's fists clenched, the storm fading to a drizzle as rage surged through him. He'd seen soldiers discarded, left to rot when they couldn't march, and Dusty was no different, a casualty of a war he hadn't chosen. "Roy Hensley," he muttered, the name a splinter in his mind, tugging at a memory from Vietnam he couldn't grasp. Inside, the stove's warmth enveloped them, Dusty shivering on his blanket as Alma bandaged his gash. Ruby Mae paced, her hands on her hips, recounting Leon's call. Said they'd handle it. "I lost Tom to men like that. Cold-blooded types who don't care who they hurt." Her voice cracked. Oh, a widow's pain surfacing, and Claire met her gaze, a silent pact forming. Alma knelt by Dusty, her stethoscope glinting, but the dog flinched hard, a whine escaping in throat. "Trauma," she murmured, realization dawning. Whatever they did, it involved gear like this. Claire's mind flashed to VA visits, cold tables, needles, his own dread, and he understood. He rested a hand near Dusty, not touching, just there, and the dog's eyes softened, a flicker of trust breaking through. The storm settled into a misty haze, the ranch quiet but charged with unspoken questions. Claire sat by Dusty, his coffee cold, the name Roy Hensley echoing like a drumbeat from the past. Alma slipped the tag into her pocket, her voice firm. "I'll find out more. Military records, anything." Ruby Mae nodded, her resolve steeling. "I'll keep an ear out." Leon's not done. Outside the oak stood sentinel, their whispers hinting at battles ahead. Dusty's breathing slowed, his head tilting toward Claire, a bond forged in shared survival. Something dark loomed. Hensley, Leon. A secret etched in scars, but for now, they rested. A fragile calm before the reckoning. The sun beat down on the training compound near San Antonio, a relentless glare bouncing off steel kennels and dusty lots, the air thick with the scent of diesel and sweat. It was a week after the storm, and the sprawl hummed with activity. Handlers barking orders, dogs pacing in tight circles, their yips echoing off metal walls. Claire stood at the edge of the crowd, his Marine Corps jacket swapped for a plain shirt, Dusty at his side, graying fur bristling but steady. They'd come with Dr. Alma Gutierrez and Ruby Mae Dawson, slipping in with forged passes from Jimmy Tate, a 70-year-old Vietnam vet who'd fought beside Claire decades ago. Now a guard here, Jimmy had met them at dawn, his weathered face set in a scowl as he handed Claire a faded letter. Eddie Lopez wrote this before he died. Said Titan saved us in Nam, disobeyed orders, paid for it. The letter trembled in Claire's hands, words searing into him. Titan smelled the ambush and broke rank to warn us, saved 3 lives before the shots. Hensley beat him bloody for it. Claire's throat tightened, Vietnam flooding back. Dust, screams, a fallback point he'd held while Eddie fell. Dusty, Titan, had been there, a ghost from that day, and now they faced the man who'd broken him. Roy Hensley strode onto a platform, his suit crisp, voice booming over the loudspeaker. Welcome to the future of tactical canine training. Contractors leaned in, impressed by his polish, blind to the rot beneath. Dusty's ears pricked, nose twitching, and Claire followed his gaze. Handlers moved sedated dogs out back, loading them into a van, evidence vanishing under Hensley's watch. Alma, Claire hissed, his voice low. They're covering tracks. Back kennels now. She nodded, slipping away with her notebook, while Ruby Mae clutched Eddie's letter. Her red curls a beacon in the crowd. Jimmy lingered near a gate, his cane tapping nervously, ready to act. Hensley's speech droned on, touting success rates. But Dusty tensed, a growl rumbling deep. Hensley's eyes locked on them, his smile faltering, and he pulled a device from his pocket. A high-pitched whine pierced the air, a tool from Dusty's past. The dog whimpered, ears flattening, but he stepped forward, shielding Claire, his dignity unbroken. Ruby Mae erupted, her voice cutting through. This man's a liar. Look at this. She hurled Eddie's letter and Alma's scar reports into the crowd, papers fluttering like accusations. Chaos flared, contractors murmured, handlers froze. Leon Carver emerged from the shadows, his cheap suit dusty, eyes wild with panic. Burn it, he muttered to a lackey, tossing a lighter toward the kennels. Flames licked the dry wood, smoke curling upward as sedated dogs whimpered inside. Claire's heart hammering, he shouted, Dusty, no. But the dog bolted, disappearing into the haze, his instincts overriding fear. Inside, smoke stung Dusty's lungs, heat clawing at his fur, but he moved with purpose, nudging 2 groggy shepherds toward the exit. A beam crashed, splitting the path, and the pair staggered out, collapsing into Alma's arms. Dusty was gone, lost in the inferno's roar. Claire lunged forward, Ruby Mae grabbing his arm, her voice raw. You can't! He'll make it! Jimmy hobbled closer, barking at handlers to help, his cane thumping the dirt. Hensley sneered. That mutt's unstable. Proof of failure. But the crowd turned, phones recording, a senior contractor summoning MPs. Leon's fire spread, a desperate bid to bury the truth. And Claire's mind spun, Vietnam's smoke, Eddie's screams, Dusty's courage mirroring it all. Then a crash. A wall buckled under Dusty's weight, his singed body slamming through, an escape forged by will. He stumbled out, gasping, collapsing yards from the blaze as the kennels caved behind him. Claire broke free, dropping to his knees, hands shaking as he cradled Dusty's head. "You brave fool, don't you dare leave me!" Alma raced over, her bag spilling open, barking orders. "Smoke's bad. Burns on his side. We move now." Jimmy flagged a truck, his voice steady. "Get him to Fredericksburg. Go!" Hensley lunged, drawing a concealed pistol, but MPs cuffed him mid-step, his empire crumbling under witnesses' eyes. Ruby May sobbed, clutching Eddie's letter, while Claire lifted Dusty into the truck, his whisper fierce. "Hold on, buddy, we've got more to do." The compound burned, a final act of desperation snuffed by Dusty's defiance. But as the truck sped off, Claire knew the cost hung in the balance. San Antonio's whispers grew, about a dog, an old man, a fight not yet won. And the road to Fredericksburg stretched ahead, a lifeline flickering in the dust. The pre-dawn dark cloaked Alma Gutierrez's vet clinic in Fredericksburg, its white walls glowing faintly under cold fluorescent lights, a beacon against the Texas night. Inside the waiting room was a hush of held breaths, the air thick with antiseptic and the acrid tang of smoke clinging to Claire Withers's clothes. He sat rigid on a metal chair, his soot-streaked hands clasped tight, gray eyes fixed at the double doors to the emergency bay. Beyond them, Dusty lay fragile under tubes and monitors, his scarred frame fighting the smoke and burns from the San Antonio fire. The clock ticked past 3 a.m., each second a hammer blow to Claire's chest, cracking the soldier's stoicism he'd worn since Vietnam. He'd saved Dusty from the flea market, from Hensley's cruelty, but now, kneeling by that collapsed kennel, tears cutting through the grime, he feared he'd failed again, just like in '68. Outside the parking lot filled with shadows, Fredericksburg's folk, drawn by word of Dusty's heroism. Ruby Mae Dawson bustled in first, her red curls damp with night mist, arms laden with a tray of honey cakes, still warm from her oven. "For you and the staff," she said, her voice trembling as she pressed a cake into Claire's hands. Jimmy Tate followed, his cane tapping the linoleum, a tin of coins from local vets jangling in her grip. "For the Bills, damn dog's one of us." Then came Clara Beth Hopkins, 68, a widow whose son died in Iraq, her silver hair glinting as she draped her husband's faded service flag over Claire's shoulders. "My boy loved dogs," she whispered, tears welling, and Claire's broke free, the first since he'd come home from war. "I failed him, Clara," he rasped, "like I failed Eddie." She knelt, hand firm on his arm. "You gave him a fight worth winning." Alma emerged from the bay, her face lined with exhaustion but resolute. "He's stabilizing, barely," she said, her warm voice a thread of hope. "Smoke's hit his lungs hard, burns are deep, but the town's gear, oxygen tanks, donated cash, it's keeping him here." Claire nodded, throat too tight to speak, his mind replaying Dusty's leap into the flames, saving those dogs, saving a piece of him. The vigil stretched on, coffee cups piling up, whispers weaving through the room. Ruby Mae shared her Tom's death in Vietnam, a bond with Claire's pain. Jimmy grunted tales of lost canines, his gruffness softening. Clara Beth hummed Red River Valley, her folk tune a balm over the antiseptic chill. Through the window, Claire glimpsed Dusty, chest rising faintly, singed fur stark against white sheets, and pressed his forehead to the glass, willing him to hold on. Dawn crept over the plains, painting the sky in muted pinks, and Clara Beth slipped in with a yellowed envelope. Eddie Lopez's last letter, found in her attic among her husband's things. "Jimmy said you'd need this. she murmured, handing it to Claire. His hand shook as he read. Titan led us to you in Nam, Claire. Smelled the trap, ran through hell to the fallback. I didn't make it, but you did. He's yours now. The words hit like thunder. Vietnam's dust, Eddie's grin, Dusty's defiance, all one thread, a lifeline from that day to this. He was trying to save me, Claire whispered, guilt lifting like fog, and Dusty's tail thumped weakly beyond the glass, a spark of life binding them anew. Alma smiled faintly. He's fightin' to get back to you, always has. 2 years later, the autumn sun dipped low over Dusk Haven Rehabilitation Center, once Claire's ranch, now a sanctuary framed by golden fields and whispering oaks. Claire stood on the porch, hands in a faded jacket, watching vets and their retired dogs, broken souls mending together under Dusty's graying gaze. The German shepherd, muzzle silvered, scars a badge of honor, moved slower, now, but steady, guiding a skittish pup with patient nudges. Alma oversaw the clinic wing, her trauma research a beacon. Ruby May baked for the newcomers, her cakes a welcome. Jimmy led drills, his cane a prop for pride. Clara Beth. Outreach Voice unveiled a plaque. For Eddie Lopez and Titan Dusty. Loyalty's last stand. Her song rose again. Red River Valley, weaving their story into Texas soil, the Titan actors had tasked, spurred by Dusty's tale. Care for service dogs, bans on cruelty, a legacy born from that fire. Roy Hensley's jail threat came once, a scrawled note, but Fredericksburg's resolve crushed it, their unity a shield. Claire felt lighter, the guilt of Vietnam not gone but shared, a purpose found in Dusty's trust. That evening they sat on the porch, the sun sinking in hues of purple and gold, fields stretching to the horizon. Dusty's head rested on Claire's knee, a bond beyond words, and Clara Beth's voice faded into the dusk, her tune a prayer for all they'd healed. Dusk Haven glowed, a haven of second chances, its flame lit by a dog no one wanted and an old man who dared to care. The stars emerged, silent witnesses to their triumph, and Claire's hand settled on Dusty, steady and sure, their story complete, a circle closed in the heart of Texas,